that I initiate the meeting, and then she'll be jumping on as soon as she's able to. Just wanted to confirm with staff if we're ready to commence.
Staff is ready.
Alrighty. So we are commencing the Nevada State Board of Cosmetology morning session meeting at 9:01 a.m. on Monday, August 24th. We'll start with roll call. If we can have our board members announce themselves.
Tia Latrell McCormick, board member, present.
Anita Douglas, board member, present.
Okay. Kai, if you could say that you're here.
Kai, you might be on mute. We can't hear you.
There you go. No, she's fine. She should be fine.
Oh, Kai, if you could just announce yourself, because I don't think it was recorded. Oh, you can't hear?
Member Stanton, you might be on mute. If you could unmute yourself to make your comment, please.
I think she's going to call back. Okay. Okay, let's give a moment to allow for Kai to call back. I believe we need her to have a quorum.
Well, we have Roxanne can announce herself. She just joined the meeting.
Okay, perfect. Roxanne, if you don't mind announcing yourself, we're taking roll call.
Member
Sorry,
Harris?
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Roxanne Harris, board member here.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And I think, should we just circle back with Kai once she jumps on?
Yes, you can announce that she's joined the meeting again, and you can
Okay.
call for board staff to announce themselves also.
Okay, if we could have board staff starting in the south announce themselves, and then in the north.
Gary Landry, executive director, here.
Leah Easter, compliance coordinator here.
Andrew Helm, chief financial officer.
Justin Taruk, Deputy Attorney General.
Maggie Adams, compliance coordinator.
Adam Higginbotham, Deputy Executive Director.
David Scarpelli, Inspector.
Michelle Fanning, Inspector.
Rodney Moore, Inspector.
Do we have any additional staff either in the south or north? Alrighty, well, in that case, moving on to our mission statement. The mission of the Nevada State Board of Cosmetology is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of those that obtain cosmetology-related services through the delivery of quality testing, licensing, inspection, and education services that focus on consumer protection. And now moving on, I think the Pledge of Allegiance is missing.
We've removed the Pledge of Allegiance from the proceedings.
Okay, never mind then. Alrighty, moving on to agenda or item C, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. board discussion and possible action. We are to review the minutes from the August 10th, 2020 meeting, both the morning and the afternoon meetings. If I could have a motion to approve
What-
both the, Mhm.
1 second, Brian. There's going to be a change on the morning meeting under agenda item F. There was no motion second made under that agenda item, so that will be revised on the agenda to remove that. And that, with that, the meeting minutes should be good.
Okay, is that something that we should go back and motion, or is that?
You can have them approve it with those revisions in it.
Okay,
Member Negretti, I believe, just joined the meeting.
Yes, Victoria Negretti, board member, present.
And I believe that Member Stanton also rejoined the meeting.
Kai, are you able to hear?
Yes, thank you. Computers,
Okay, perfect.
thank you.
And so if we could, once again, we're just on the agenda item C, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting with, I believe there's a revision to the, what was it, second on item F, was it?
Yes, the motion and second on item F need to be removed. There was no motion second made. That will be corrected in the minutes, and you can approve them with that particular amendment.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment?
This is Kai Stanton. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment that has been highlighted to add to this motion as well.
And Member,
This is,
Can we,
sorry, just to clarify, Member Stanton, and that's a motion to approve both the morning and afternoon sessions of the August 10 meetings?
Yes, sir.
this is board member McCormick. I'd like to make, or I'd like to second that motion to approve both minute meetings from August 10th.
all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. And now moving on to agenda item D, comments from the general public for discussion only. We will now entertain comments from the general public for any item that is or is not on the published agenda and is related to the Nevada State Board of Cosmetology. Please note no action can be taken on a matter unless it is included in an agenda, or in particular this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Please remember to unmute yourself and announce yourself if you do make a public comment. Any comments down here? Well, any comments in general? I keep on thinking we're in the building. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a public comment at this time?
Hello,
All
this
right.
is hello,
Please go ahead.
Lucille Suarez from Euphoria Institute. So I was just trying to understand. So today is, I thought today was going to be or are we going to prepare a meeting or set a meeting to discuss a hybrid program down the line? Is that what today is about? Or is today, because I can't get the agenda open. So I'm having a hard time. I'm seeing if somebody else could get it open, but it won't open. So I'm just trying to make sure that I understand what today is about in regards to the schools and whether or not what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so on the agenda, what we're on is for discussion of the draft for the emergency regulation that does pertain to remote teaching. And this is just the emergency regulation that was supposed to be made available at the last meeting, but was not. So you all didn't have that available to you. We're also moving on to the formation of a law review subcommittee and then a possible formation of a permanent hybrid education subcommittee, which I think that one may encompass a bit more of the long term of what you may be seeking.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Perfect. Anyone else have any comments that they would like to make? Alrighty, seeing no additional comments, we will close the comments and move on to agenda item E. We will be discussing, or the discussion of the draft document of the emergency regulation regarding remote education for practical hours and exams. Again, we will be discussing emergency regulation allowing for remote teaching of practical hours and testing. Do we have, I suppose we open it up to the board now. Does the board have any comments that they would like to make in regards to this emergency regulation?
Brian, this is Gary Landry, Executive Director. I just wanted to make a couple of comments before the board discusses it. The way that this goes through, when the board, if the board approves any emergency regulations, they will be sent to the governor and ask for his signature. That's why there's an email and certified mailing to the Honorable Steve Sisolak, Governor, as far as the first item of the agenda, of the pack. The second item in the pack lists two separate additions to the regulations. That is under NAC 644A.618, item 3, except in a state of emergency as declared by the governor and upon a majority vote of the board, that will be added. And under 3A, should the board allow practice at home, such practice is limited solely to practice on a mannequin. Those are the two changes that we make to the laws, to the regulations as we see it, to allow emergency practice of the practical on mannequins.
Okay. And just for confirmation purposes, this regulation will last up until the point that the governor, I guess, no longer calls for a state of emergency, or, and I forget, was there a specific
So as long as there's an emergency going on, the board
it would remain.
Once there's no emergency, this goes away. That's why that's when the hygienic, the hybrid education subcommittee that's coming up later, that's when that would go into effect, and that would change the actual regulations permanently.
Okay.
And Vice President,
Perfect.
this is Justin Giroux. Just wanted to confirm for the board as well that under NRS Chapter 233B, which is the Administrative Procedural Act, emergency regulations are typically only valid for 120 days. And also, just for clarification for everyone on the telephone call today, even if the board does decide to approve this regulation, that doesn't mean that it will be effective today. It still has to be passed over to Governor Sisolak for his review, and only upon Governor Sisolak's execution of it, if he so chooses, will it then become effective.
Thank you. So does everyone understand the time frame in which this will be in effect, and that this will only be in effect if the governor signs it?
Yes, can we also have that, please repeat that NRS, Justin, if you will, please?
Sure. I'm not sure exactly the, let me look it up real quick, but it's Chapter 233B. Okay, so NRS 233B.0613, subsection 4 states, quote, a regulation adopted pursuant to this section may be effective for a period of not longer than 120 days.
At which point, I'm assuming if we need a longer period, we would just draft another emergency regulation for
At that,
approval by the governor?
at that point, Vice President Baltazar, you would have to engage in whether or not you would decide if you wanted a temporary or a permanent regulation.
Okay,
Or says a regulation may be adopted by this emergency procedure only once.
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
So it's kind of, emergency regulations are kind of just like a tie-in, just to give you guys some time to decide whether or not this is something you guys would want to do on a temporary or a permanent basis.
Okay. Do we have any questions by the board? Any additional questions, comments, or discussion?
This is Kai Stanton, for the record, Treasurer Board Member. I would like to ask Justin a question. Are we, do you think it would, let me rephrase that question, I apologize. Can any board member at this time make a motion to have the emergency regulation permanent versus approving temporary? Just those two terms so that we don't have to revene in 120 days. Is that an option? I'm just asking.
Member Stanton, that would not be an option. In order to do a permanent or a temporary, you would have to follow the procedures such as having a workshop. You'd have to notice the workshop, then you'd have to send it over to LCB for their review, and then it comes back to the board with their comments and proposed changes or anything. And then at that point, it would have to have another public meeting to decide whether or not you guys accept that. And then it goes back to LCB for confirmation. So there's a whole nother step for adopting it. The emergency regulations are just to, it's kind of like a quicker process because of the emergency that the board is facing at hand.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this would be a very good starting point regarding the workshops and all that other fun stuff. The temporary is a great starting point to move in that direction if the board votes to do so.
That's correct, Member Stanton, but just remember, temporary is also a different type of regulation. Emergency,
exactly.
So emergency, there's three, remember, so emergency, temporary, and permanent. So even though the emergency is temporary, if you think about it, it expires in 120 days. It's still, there's a different term of art, I guess, under 233 for temporary, because there's a different time frame for that as well. So both, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I apologize. I appreciate the elaboration and detail. I just want to try to, just for time's sake, and harness the information as basic as possible so that it can be understood and broad across the board. In full detail, if the board chooses to vote on that, I would just like to point out that temporary is a good starting point, as you suggested further. So thank you so much. I appreciate that, Justin.
Do we have any additional comments that are going to be made by board members? Alrighty, if not, we now open it up to the public, correct? Do we have the public? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Vice President Baltazar, you can if you want to. It's up to you.
Oh, well, I think I've already kind of started unintentionally or unwittingly. Do we have any members of the public that wanted to make comments on this particular agenda item pertaining to the emergency regulation or the adoption? Alrighty, seeing no comments, I suppose now we can hold
I would like to comment, please. Sorry, it's Kathy.
Please state your name.
SEMA.
Go right ahead.
I would actually like to see if there's a possibility in this draft to be able to follow the guidelines of our accreditation companies that we work with. Up to 50% of our curriculum could actually be done as far as distance education, and would like to follow those guidelines. I think as a school, we look at, of course, we want to have the best students that graduate. We want to make sure they have, the proper hands-on. And so the amount of content in an emergency as well as ongoing education, it gives them so many different ways to be able to receive content based off of their learning style, and there's just a lot of benefits to it. So I really would like to suggest possibly following kind of those same guidelines of up to 50% of the curriculum could be done as distance education. And that would be up to the school to determine what that is, knowing that of course we want them to have the best hands-on and the best techniques when they leave our program. In addition to that, I do feel that this is something that I would like to see as ongoing, not just as a temporary emergency, but I feel like if that's up for discussion today as well, that we should also discuss that too.
Thank you. Can we have staff address her recommendation?
Yes, one thing we did was to keep it fairly general in the emergency section, not to confuse the governor, not to have the governor have to do a lot of research on it. Try keeping it very high level. When the board votes, if the governor signs this, it would come back to the board. You would then vote on what percentage would be allowed. 20%, 50%, 80%, whatever percentage you want would be allowed. And I would suggest, as the participant had said, that we keep it in line with the NACAS guidelines for getting certification and getting registered. So I keep those guidelines the same, but I prefer not having it in the emergency regulations because it does cloud them up a bit. As far as permanent regulations, that'll be addressed in agenda item G, where the hybrid education committee would be started, and that would address all the permanent changes that you want to have in the regulations.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that, Gary.
Vice President Baltazar, before the board makes a vote, I'd like to add one more thing, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
It's separate from what Nima was saying, but just reviewing NRS 233B again, 0613. In the cover letter to Governor Sisolak, I would recommend inserting there that a sentence that says this should only be up to 120 days, just for confirmation.
Board Member McCormick, Justin, can you tell me again when exactly the subcommittee kicks in? I think you explained that it kicks in after the 120-day period, or are you saying that, or did I misunderstand that? Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry, Member McCormick. Are you referring to the subcommittee for permanent regulations, or?
Yeah, and just address that later, but I thought I heard someone say that it kicks in after a certain amount of time, but I'll get clarity on that further down the line. But can we get clarity as to what the motion needs to be that is before us? Because I think we're getting a little, I'm personally getting a little lost with what's to come. But right now we need to take a vote for this emergency regulation. Is that correct? Or are we?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yes, Member McCormick, that's correct. So under this agenda item E, if you look at your board pack, I believe it says page 14 through 20 on the bottom of the page. It starts with a letter that says via email and certified mail. It's dated August 10th, but I believe board staff will change it, and it's addressed to the Honorable Steve Sisolak, Governor. And the next 4 or 5 pages discusses the draft regulation for the emergency. That's what we're discussing at this point. The emergency regulation would, as I pointed out under NRS 233B 0613, would be good for up to 120 days if that's what board chooses. And just to make sure to make that inside the cover letter, that's going to Governor Sisolak. And then the actual amended regulation language is found on page 16 and 17 of board pack. And it's just those two italicized in blue phrases that are added that will be submitted to Governor Sisolak. The next 2 pages is some information for Governor Sisolak and his team to review. Basically, it's just kind of why is it needed? What are the effects of the regulation? Is there going to be an additional cost to enforce it, and so on. As far as the timeline goes, so again, if the board makes the motion today to approve the emergency regulation as presented or as amended, however you want today, then what will happen is Gary, as the executive director, would sign off on that letter to the governor, submitting the packet that's in front of you today. The governor will then review it, see if he has any issues or if he's going to approve it. And then it's up for governor to approve it or not. And then if you notice on the letter as well, it has a signature block for Governor Sisolak to sign. The emergency regulation won't be effective until Governor Sisolak gives it back and is filed with the Secretary of State. If the governor then approves the emergency regulation, then if you notice on the phrasing of your proposed regulation, it says, except in a state of emergency, it's declared by the governor and upon a majority vote of the board. So then what will happen is we have to call a new board meeting and the board can vote, yes, let's go ahead and enact what it says in the emergency regulation and then allow the schools at that point to have practical.
And that's where you would put in any restrictions on how much, 50%, 30%, 80%, whatever you want. That's where you put in the amount of teaching that can be done through distance.
Okay, so this is something that we can vote, I mean, and this is pretty clear. I'm just saying, can we just leave these other issues for subcommittee? Is that okay? Any other changes? We can discuss them in the interim, and then when the time comes for us to make decisions or changes, will we have convened this, or will we have started this subcommittee well enough time to review this stuff?
My understanding, Member McCormick, is that the subcommittee that you're voting on later today is for a permanent hybrid. If there's any changes to the emergency, I would recommend doing them now because the permanent hybrid subcommittee is for that, the permanent.
Right, but after the emergency, it's only 120 days, and then it would be 1 year from that period, right? That this would be, is it 1 year from the time of it expiring to where we would have to decide whether to make it permanent, or will we have another opportunity if there's still a state of emergency to extend this again?
At that point, you have the 120 days to determine whether or not you want to make it a permanent. So within
exactly. So that's why I'm asking, like in that time frame, are we going to? Never mind. Okay, I think can we just? I don't need to muddy the waters, but I do think we probably just need to call for a vote because I think. For me, I'm thinking ahead, and we just need to deal with the emergency in front of us. So please just park my questions. They're a little bit down the road, so my apologies.
All right, so just for clarification purposes, this is only good for 120 days. After that, the board decides whether they want to adopt a temporary or permanent regulation change. So we have to treat these separately. So this particular emergency regulation, again, it is just the emergency regulation for 120 days. Any changes to this emergency regulation once the governor, if approved, then we would build out what the structure looks like, how we want it to consist. So with that said, if we could have a motion, I think we should include the 120-day time frame to reinforce basically other regulations that state how long an emergency regulation is. I think we should include that addendum in our language. So if we could have a motion.
Mr. President, Vice President, I apologize. I do have one more question regarding the emergency regulations. On if we once this is passed, if this gets passed, approved, etc. Please excuse me. I would like to know, does this include freshmen when they're starting to be able to start, never having training, never held scissors ever, to be able to start their training online? Never been in a classroom.
That would only be if the board wants that to be allowed. When the way it would work, if this gets passed by the board today, it gets sent to the governor. Governor signs it. It goes back to the board for you to approve what you want as far as distance learning. At that point, you can say this many hours, this percentage of learning, who can have it, whether it's a freshman who's just been in class, never been in a practical session before. Any restrictions you want to put, you could put at that time. But that will be a later time. This is only to allow the governor to say, yes, I see it's an emergency, and sign it.
Perfect.
It's 120 days, but it doesn't go into effect until it goes back to the board for another vote, and you're going to then determine the percentages, who gets it, how often they can get it. All of that will be determined at that point.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, President. I would like to proceed with the motion.
Okay, if we can have someone make a motion.
This is Board Member Kai Stanton. I would like to make a motion to uphold the emergency regulations that have been drafted to be presented to the governor's office.
Member Stanton, did you also want to include the 120-day addendum that was discussed as pointed out by Vice President Balthazar in the cover letter for 120 days?
Yes, sir. I would like to add the 120 days to that motion.
Thank you.
This is Anita Douglas, board member. I second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Alrighty, moving on to agenda item F, the formation of a law review subcommittee. Do we have any comments by the board in regards to this? Actually, I do have one question. But I'll save my question until everyone else asks theirs. So again, any board members, do you have any questions in regards to the formation of a law review subcommittee?
No, I think all information looks accurate regarding the information that the board would like to make sure certain regulations are adopted with clear understanding of all backgrounds and fully understanding of the board of the laws and regulations in review in full detail. So I think that this would be extremely supportive of the success and direction and strength of knowledge for the board to be successful moving forward.
Thank you. So my question would be, how long would this committee be in effect? I believe this is one of those subcommittees that I think should be a standing or a permanent committee, just to be able to take in suggestions throughout the entire year, because we may have the schools that may want to suggest something. Things may be suggested as they arise. We don't really want to condense or limit the time frame that we entertain any regulation changes. I don't feel comfortable with our legislature really condensing everything within a few months of when they're going to entertain law changes. And so I really wouldn't want to follow in their footsteps. and open it up to year-round changes. Like, so is that something that could be put into effect, or do we have a blueprint on how long committees can be in effect for?
President, this is Kai Stanton. From my understanding, according to AG manual, that we are allowed to have permanent committees. It's all about proper process, which will lead on Justin for that, and making sure that agenda follows through if the board sees that that is something that is necessary. Given the sensitive time and other things that need to be done with full detail and other emergencies that need to also have its focus, we want to make sure that we are not neglecting, and that's the whole point why we're here, for the public agenda as well as their interest, and we want to make sure that that is brought it for them. I think this committee long-term will support that, as well as the knowledge that we need to make sure it is fully understood by all board members.
Thank you, Board Member Stanton. Do we have any additional comments by the board? By the board? Any comments by the public? Alrighty, seeing no additional comments from either parties, can we have a motion to form the Law Review Committee? And please take into account whether you would like to see this as a standing committee, or if it's meant to be within a certain time frame. I will leave that up to whoever makes the motion.
This is Kai Stanton. I would like to make a motion to form a law review committee. I would like that committee to be standard if it pleases the board, for further support of the board as well as the agenda of the public and the interest.
Do we have a second to that motion?
This is Board Member McCormick. I second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Motion passes.
Vice President Baltazar, also as a aside, you might want to also determine who's going to be on the subcommittee.
Is that something that we want to discuss now?
You can if you want.
I would suggest at least getting a few members on it, whether the whole board can be on it or certain members can be on it. But I would get some names established on that, so that when we want to set up the meeting, we would coordinate with those people to find their schedules and get a meeting set up for that. And then after that, you can have board members join or drop off or whatever, depending on what's on the agenda. I think you need to have at least one board member as a member of the law subcommittee.
Okay. Well, I make it no secret. I would like to be part of that subcommittee. Do we have any other board members that would like to propose themselves?
This is Kai Stanton. I would like to be on that subcommittee if it pleases the board, President.
Do we have any additional board members that would like to be present? And I'm assuming that if they choose to be part of it and then later on find that they do not want to be part of it, that they are allowed to retract themselves.
Yes, that's true. The law subcommittees do not have to have a quorum. They can have a quorum of the board members, but it's not required. So as long as there's one board member, you can have a law subcommittee meeting.
So just for clarification on that, Vice President Baltazar, so whoever chooses to be on the subcommittee, there has to be a quorum of the people who are on that subcommittee, not the entirety of the board.
Okay.
Board Member McCormick, I'd like to be on this committee as well.
This is Kai Stanton, President. May I please suggest someone that is not on the board, and then that may be currently in this meeting that has the opportunity to say yay or nay if they would like to be on the subcommittee? Can we make a suggestion on who we would like to add on as well that is not on the board?
Member Stanton, I believe that the subcommittee meetings are going to be open to the public. I would recommend just having the subcommittee, the members of the board. And if the public members have any comments or anything, they can make it at the open meetings of the subcommittee.
Okay.
Hi, can I add Victoria Negretti? I'd like to be a part of the committee, please.
Board members Harris and Douglas, would you all like to be part of it?
Yes, Roxanne Harris, I would like to be part of that committee.
Also, Anita Douglas, board member, I would like to be part of that committee also.
Okay, I think that's the entire board aside from the board chair. So I'm sure the board chair will communicate to board staff whether she wants to be part of that committee. Just please note that in order to, I'm assuming, to hold that law review subcommittee meeting, we would need a quorum of the members of that subcommittee in order to be able to hold that meeting. So any conflicts or anything, just make sure to communicate to board staff so they can schedule accordingly and ensure that we have a quorum. But other than that,
a quorum of this group, Vice President Balthazar, would be 4 people. So 4 people would have to be on the meeting for it to be a legal meeting. That's all.
okay, fantastic. Thank you, Gary. All righty. So I think, is there anything else that we need to address before we move on from this item?
Yes, if you could, please, Vice President Balthazar. I believe that President Bramo just joined the meeting, just a side note on that. But as far as the committee members, I believe to make it official, you should take a vote to have those who volunteered to be on the subcommittee to be on the committee.
Okay. Should I yield back to the board chair then? Do we have board president Gwen Bramo on the?
Yes,
there we go.
good morning. I'm sorry, I apologize, board, and those that have signed in this morning to participate in the meeting. I'm good. Gwen Bramo, board chair. Go ahead, Brian Balthazar.
Okay, I guess I'll finish this out and then yield back to our board chair. Can we have a motion to, I guess, Gwen, did you want to be part of the law review subcommittee?
You mean for the actual implementing of the permanent online?
It's agenda item F, so it's the law review committee that we have.
Yes.
Okay. So can we have, I believe the original motion maker was Kai Stanton. If you would like to add to your motion the members that are part of that law review subcommittee, which is essentially everyone. And then if we could have a vote on that just to make it official.
Yes, Vice President. Would you like me to go down the names individually? First name, and if I miss anyone, I respectfully apologize, and please, I am asking for correction. I would like to make a motion to form a law review committee that would be standing, considered permanently, for the State Board of Cosmetology. The subcommittee list as Brian, Gwen, Anita, Victoria, Roxanne, and Kai, which requires approved by the board.
And Tia Luttrell.
Thank you. I would like to add Tila Luttrell.
Anita Douglas, board member. I would like to second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries, and I yield back to Board President Gwen Bramo.
Okay, so we are now formulating, is it agenda item number G, the formation of a permanent hybrid education subcommittee for discussion and/or possible action. So now it's time for the board to discuss the formation of a permanent hybrid education subcommittee.
Alrighty, so my question would be, is there a need for that committee to be permanent? I can understand the law review committee being permanent if we're going to continuously take in, regulation suggestions, changes to regulations, I should say. I'm not sure how, I'm trying to picture the need to have a permanent hybrid education subcommittee. To be quite honest, I'm trying to understand what, by hybrid, what we mean. Would it be, are we talking about the composition of the committee? Is that what would be a hybrid, both board members and educators, essentially the public? If I could have just board staff clarify what we mean by hybrid and what the benefit to having it as a permanent committee would be.
Vice President Baltazar, Gary Landry, Executive Director. Hybrid would mean it's discussing those aspects of the education that do not fall in the regular course of doing business, mostly distance learning. So it would be a committee to figure out what are all the things that need to be put in place in the laws and regulations to allow distance learning with this result. Whether it's permanent or not, it doesn't matter to me. If you made it permanent, it could go active and inactive and only be brought up active when there's something that needs.
I don't like this already.
I know, that's why.
Ms. Dixon, if you could mute yourself, please.
So that's what the permanent hybrid education subcommittee would do, would be to address all the issues facing the schools as far as non-regular laws and regulations, distance learning in fact.
This is Board Member McCormick. Thank you, Executive Director Landry. I do hope that they will make this a permanent committee because I feel that things are changing very rapidly. I feel like there's a wealth of information, especially by our staff, that just offers and lends to a better understanding as we make these decisions that affect all of our licensees, the schools. I think it could be an ongoing discussion, at least for the next few years. So I would hope that you would allow a committee to stay in place that could be convened at any time to discuss matters as they arise, because like I said, things do tend to be changing very rapidly.
This is Kai Stanton, and this is a hot topic for the best interest of the public. And I think that we need to take a serious look at that and a strong consideration when this has been asked for several times regarding the details of permanent. I think that having that information there and ready and in front of us that has been extensively researched is very important. Because there are so many processes we have to get to make sure that what the public is asking is solidified and very clear, and we want to make sure that we have all that information there. I do apologize, we can't expedite things as wonderfully as we would like them to, because we want to make sure that everyone has the same information across the board. And so it's very important that we all have that committee ongoing to be able to make those changes that is requesting by the public.
Okay, Gwen Bramo, board member. I think with the committee, we need to go ahead and start the process of setting up the committee. And I think the committee should comprise of maybe one public member, maybe the executive, I mean, a director from a school, maybe more than one. I just think we need to form a subcommittee so that we can start the process of allowing schools, if that's so, the opportunity to be able to have offer hybrid learning in their institution. So I think we've gotten enough information to at least form a committee, because we know that even from the temporary information, temporary approval today, I'm sure that you guys went ahead and approved that so that the schools could, you know, in case of this disaster and not knowing what's going to happen in the future, that there are some schools that want to offer hybrid education. I think it's time for us to, as a board, to take a look at it. So, should it be permanent? Probably so, my opinion. You never know what needs to be modified, what's working, what's not working, and at least, like Director Landry said, if it's permanent, it's there. We don't have to keep going back to the table with it. We can just bring it forth into another meeting and another workshop, however we set that up. So I think today the board we're just formation of a permanent hybrid education subcommittee. Executive Director Landry, question for you. Do we have a time frame to how are we going to select the committee?
The committee would be selected by the board members are the only ones you have to select now. The remainder of the committee and the committee's participation can be the open public. The public would have access to these meetings, and anyone who wants to come and testify, offer information, do whatever could be put on the committee. The board could choose to have some members of the public put on that committee. But remember, if they're a member of the committee, you have to have a quorum of those people to attend the meeting. So if you had 6 or 8, you'd have to have 4 members of that committee attend the meeting if you want to have a meeting. I would suggest having only board members as the only members of the committee, and then invite all the school executives to come in and participate in your meetings.
Okay, so I believe at this time, the board just has to make a decision. Do we have any discussion before a decision is made for possible action on the formation of the permanent hybrid education subcommittee?
This is Kai Stanton. We have had some wonderful people representative from different schools. I know of several members have came with accurate information and ready to show and prepared. And so I would like at least one of them to be on that committee. I value all of their information, which is very good information. And I think that in light of communication of past, I think it would be very important to make sure that they further understand that we take their concerns seriously, and to have at least one representative on that committee may be within our best interest. That's just my suggestion. The board still needs to vote on that. Having others come and attend and inputting their information is just as valuable, but when you have them a part of the actual process, it may be a little bit more effective. Thank you, Madam President. This is just my statement.
Thank you for your statement. Do we have any other board members at this time would like to discuss the hybrid education subcommittee?
This is Board Member McCormick. I just, again, would like to, off the heels of what Kai said and Brian said, and also what you said, I just think the need is there. I think that we know that it will probably be a longer term need than shorter term, so I'd love to see it become permanent. And then also, I do like the idea of having at least one public member be a part of the conversation, because this is at the core of why this is being formed, is for that conversation and that transparency in making these changes. So that would be my position, and I just wanted to put that, before everyone one last time.
Okay, so
Actually, if I could make a comment,
yes.
Board Member Brian Baltazar, I'm definitely, open to having the public part of that. I think it creates more participation, and I think by having the schools represented there, I think they're more inclined to be at that table. Not that there's ever been a lack of participation, but I would caution to only having one school representative. I would hate for it to look like one school is getting preferential treatment over another, even if there is no preferential treatment. Optically, me looking outside in as a public member, that's the impression that I would get. So I would caution against only having one public member on there.
And Board Member McCormick, for clarity, the higher the member count for our actual board members, the higher the need for a quorum, right? So our quorum grows. So this is definitely something we're gonna have to discuss.
So I think the first question, Gwen Bramo, board member, I think maybe we should come up with how many board members that's interested in being part of the hybrid education subcommittee, and then we can maybe reach out to staff for the additional. Because I think today we need to make action on, are we going to form the committee today moving forward? Or, I mean, I need some discussion so that I know how we're going to proceed. We should proceed with something today either way.
Madam President, I'd love to call for the vote, but I think if I could ask for clarity, we only need one person to, it was only recommended that one person be assigned to a committee, and we could make, things from there. So perhaps we do turn it to staff and, assign members later.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Justin.
Go ahead.
Okay, so can we actually make a vote to move forward with the hybrid education subcommittee today? And do we have to have the board members vote who want to be a part of that committee today?
So to take your question in two parts. So yes, the board can vote to create the subcommittee today. The board can then, if it wants to, just kind of ponder who wants to be on it, have the formation of it. I would actually have recommended that to put it on a separate agenda item if you guys wanted a public member. So you could do it in two ways, right? You could do today, just vote on creating the subcommittee and say, all right, it's going forward. Then I believe we have a meeting in 2 weeks. September.
We're gonna try and have a meeting on September 14th, if the board members are available. That's not set. That'll be another meeting.
So then at the next board meeting, then have an agenda item that says who's going to be appointed onto that subcommittee. So that way, members of the public, if they're interested in that, can reach out to board staff, and the board staff can present who is interested from the public at that time. So yes,
okay.
You can form it today, and then have the board, whoever wants to be on the subcommittee, form those names later.
Okay, so I need to ask the question of the board members who would like to participate. Is there any amount of people do we have a limit of how many that participate in that committee, or what's your recommendation? Because that committee could get pretty big. A lot of people are interested in it.
Sure. There's no limitation stated in your statutes about subcommittees and how many people can be on there. The only thing that you need to be aware of is the quorum count, right? So if you guys say, I want a 10-member subcommittee, with the quorum of that, then you need 6 to show up for every single subcommittee. So the less number of committee members you have that are appointed, then the less number that you'll need to actually be able to have the quorum to have the meeting.
Okay.
So you can have all the board members show up at every meeting, but only designate, say, 2 or 3 as members of the committee. The others can show up and participate, but they wouldn't be official members of the committee, and that would keep your quorum down to 2 if you had 3 members.
Okay, I think all board members should be a part of the committee. That's my personal opinion. But then I think there should be like only a certain amount of board members that place a vote, but I do think there should be outside representation as well. So today, can we just maybe call for a vote to move forward with the subcommittee?
Yes, and just to clarify, when you vote as a subcommittee, that's voting to present the information you came up with to the full board. The full board, everything the subcommittee does has to go before the full board.
Okay, absolutely. For approval, right?
Correct.
So we don't vote on anything. We just, with the subcommittee being formed, all we're going to do is discuss and work with staff in implementing how maybe the process should look.
Correct. And
then it has to go back before the board for approval.
That is correct.
Okay, so I think to maybe expedite some of it, the board members should be involved so that we won't keep bringing things back and forth.
Yep.
Okay, so can I call for a motion? Can I get one?
This is Board Member McCormick. I would like to make a motion to approve the formation of a permanent hybrid education subcommittee.
This is Kai Stanton. I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Yay, okay. That's one stepping stone, another, right? Agenda item H, comments from the general public. The board will entertain comments from the general public for any item that is or is not published on the agenda of the Board of Cosmetology. No action can be taken unless it's included on the agenda. The comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments from the public on anything that was on the agenda or not on the agenda?
Hi, this is Benita Holly from Euphoria Institute. So I just want to get clarification on the subcommittee and the law review committee. Wouldn't the law review committee, couldn't that hybrid committee fall under the law review? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Theoretically, I would say.
This is Gary Landry, Executive Director. The law subcommittee could review all of what the hybrid education subcommittee is doing, but I trust that they will not, and they will allow the hybrid subcommittee to do their work and the law subcommittee do their work, both of them submitting information to the full board. The full board is where you're going to get all the approvals.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So there's a need for, because I think with the law, I think I want to clarify, if I can, Director Landry, with the law sub review committee, it's going to encompass all of the changes that we're going to be working on for the next legislation period, right?
For any legislative period, whether it's the next one, the following, they'll be, the law subcommittee will be to review the laws that the board deems necessary to change, or what the subcommittee thinks needs to be changed and brought before the full board. So that's for every law, every regulation.
Right. And the subcommittee was going to be specific for the hybrid education in forming that particular additional program.
That's correct.
Or extension of learning.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions or
Yes,
concerns?
This is Lou Suarez from Euphoria Institute. And I was just wondering, what's that time frame look like? So we've established that we're going to establish a hybrid committee. And what does that look like in the sense of time? I'm sorry. Are we going to, do we have a deadline? Do we have any time frames outlined, or can we outline? Because I just feel like, before we know it, it's going to be time to vote. And I just want to make sure that we have enough time to get together with all of the schools, have those conversations, you know, hammer it out, what we want to have happen. But I feel like there does need to be some sort of a time frame stamped onto this, this process.
I would agree, especially if the goal of the hybrid committee is to discuss moving from an emergency regulation into either a more permanent regulation. I would agree we shouldn't probably wait until the emergency regulation is expired. We should probably start that process as soon as possible to hopefully have a better idea of whether we're going to move on with a permanent regulation as we approach the end of shelf life of the emergency regulation.
Gwen Bramo. Go ahead.
Nick, Brian, I think we're just now circling back to what I brought up earlier, so I'm glad we're here again. Yes, when will this committee start? Because 120 days is not that long, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't starting after a certain period of time. So that is a great question.
I thought Gary just explained that. Can you explain that again to them, Gary?
Just wanted to make mention, this is public comment. You can't take any action now. You can't do any decisions. This is for the public to comment. We can have comments afterward, after the meeting, but during the meeting, we cannot have public, the public can comment, and that's it. You can't make discussion and you can't make decisions on what the public has said.
Okay.
That's the way the law reads. I just want to clarify that with everyone.
So let's just make sure that we save these tidbits and implement that in the next meeting.
Correct.
Well, I not just that next meeting when it gets to the board board members' comments, right, Gary?
You can discuss it in board members' comments ad nauseum. You can do that, but now it's the public comment.
Right, it's public comment. I think that during the board members' comment, there could be no action, but there could be discussion.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, so then, Luke, I guess we can answer your question at that time. Okay, any other comments? Okay, no comments from nobody. Have any comments? So we're going to go to agenda item I, comments from board members for discussion only. And this is where I believe some of the questions or comments are coming from. Excuse me, my voice is terrible this morning. But Gary, correct me if I'm wrong. The next meeting, we will have it on the agenda. We should already have the committee formed, and can we have some meeting dates available?
Yes, you can have both of those ready to go for the next meeting. That won't be a problem. And that will set the course for what the subcommittee will do. Subcommittee can meet every week. They can meet every 2 weeks.
Right.
I would suggest, just as a recommendation, you want to have all the stuff done by the end of December this year. That's 120 days after this time frame. Whether the governor signs the emergency regulations or not, you'd be ready in January to present to the board what regulations need to be changed and how you want to change them. That could then initiate the workshop and all the other steps that Justin outlined that have to be done to change the permanent regulations permanently.
I think with meetings maybe twice a week or so, but I think the staff can assist us in setting up that particular information, right, for approval for the next board meeting in September.
Whenever you all want to meet, however often you can meet, whenever you can meet, we'll set up any meetings that you need.
Okay. I don't have any other comments from any board members.
This is Kai Stanton. I just want to make the statement that I appreciate each and every person that comes out diligently and bringing their information to the table, because I know sometimes it seems as if our voices are clouded in the shuffle, and we want to make it abundantly clear that we are here for the public's agenda, and we want to make sure that the proper process is in place. So please continue to come and bring your facts and knowledge, because it is very valuable to every single one of us, including myself. And for those that are continuing to bring that information diligently, please continue to do so. Do not feel as if your information is being not implemented or addressed. We just want to make sure that they are done accordingly and making sure that they're implementing properly. And all of you have given us information to think about and to also implement. So I further wanted to just say I appreciate each and every one of you, and to encourage you to come and be a part of subcommittees that are offered and opened. Please communicate when that forum is open to you as far as comments. Thank you again.
Thank you. Any other comment from any other board member? Okay, I would like to get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Brian Baltazar, motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is Kai Stanton. I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And just want to remind all the board members, we do have a 1 o'clock meeting. So if you dial in 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting, we'll be starting the meeting at 1 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.